Hey guys, welcome back to Nightllii with Meccavellii. This is going to be another book club episode. We're chugging along on through The Matriarch by Tina Knowles. I will say I only got through 2 chapters today. They were making me work very hard for my money, but it does work out because since I've been reading it like every 4 chapters for Act 1, and Act 1 is called A Daughter, there's only 4 chapters left. So the next video will be the last 4 chapters of Act 1, A Daughter, and then we'll get to go into Act 2, A Mother. I just can't stress enough how much of a good read this is. I'm really enjoying learning so much about Miss Tina, and then again, having parents who are her peers and being able to relate these, like what she's talking about, back to my own experiences. Just like, damn, Miss Tina, you sound like my daddy and them. Like, Beyonce really just like us. Like, she's really just like us. So cool. Chapter 9 is called An Education in Liberation, and it takes place in September of 1968. Obviously, we know that's a very crucial year of the civil rights movement in general. So at this point, I think I mentioned this in the previous chapters, there is a black high school called Central High School in Galveston. And even though Brown versus Board of Education was passed the year Miss Tina was born in 1954, they have a clause in there saying with all due speed or with all deliberate speed, meaning there were southern states who did not integrate like the high schools in Texas until 1968, when Miss Tina was a freshman or a sophomore, I believe. So at that point, Brown versus Board of Education was 14 years old, and they were finally at the point where they were forcing the schools in Texas to integrate. They said, yeah, it's y'all doing too much. So the thing here is Central High School in Galveston was a very well-known black high school, a very decorated black high school. Miss Tina had mentioned in one of the earlier chapters that members of W.E.B. Du Bois' Talented Tenth came from all over the country to teach at Central High School because it was the first black public high school in Texas. It was a big deal. They had a lot of sports stars. Her brother Skip was one of them. They had a big academics program for black students. It was very rigorous. And being from the black side of Galveston, it was a big deal to be, I forgot what their mascot is. I think it's a bearcat. It was a big deal to be a bearcat because the high school, like a lot of small towns, is the center of the community. So all the black businesses that were in the black business district, like, they're heavily involved with the school, they're heavily involved with the parents. Like, it's just a real community effort. And so she was saying, like, by closing this school, because the white kids didn't want to integrate into their school, so of course they closed the black school and make the black kids integrate into the white school. So it was a big loss to the community, who she was not happy about it, and she was not silent about that either. I think this is another piece where it's like she's not telling us exactly where Beyonce gets it from, but you're getting so much context as to why Beyonce tends to speak up and doesn't, I won't say not bite her tongue, because obviously Beyonce does not talk to us directly, but she's definitely not afraid to express herself through her art. And that's something that we see for Miss Tina in this whole book. Like, one thing about Miss Tina, she's gonna say what she wanna say, but we knew that from Instagram. But like having such a human perspective in terms of like her being like, why do we gotta integrate? Blah, blah, blah. And she calls the well-behaved Negroes, like she says in the book, she was not considered a well-behaved Negro. That was not her. And she was constantly she said the ambassadors of the well-behaved Negroes from the school would be like, why are you talking so much head? Like, stop doing the old, because they used to still do a lot of Central High School cheers and show a lot of pride. And so they were at the new white school and they wanted them to stop. Now, what she did say was they ended up starting like a black student union, a black studies program, and she gave the high school credit for that, which obviously she was a member. She talks about how by this time she had started wearing this huge afro because she knew about the Black Panthers and the Black Panther movement that was happening in Oakland, California, that my daddy was a part of. My dad's like 4 years older than Miss Tina, so you're seeing the lineup here. And so she was so into the movement and black rights and black history. She said she starts they did a Black History program at the high school that the school wasn't really too happy with, because they did a Black Power sign, and you know, it's like she basically, like, she didn't say this, but they tried to All Lives Matter it before All Lives Matter was a thing. So she was like, I mean, I wasn't saying fuck y'all, I was just saying Black Power. I wasn't saying fuck white people, I was just saying Black Power, you know. She gets really sick at one point during this school year, and because she's a young Black girl, she has to go to this hospital. Now her family goes to the charity hospital or the free hospital in Galveston, which is a part of the medical program. So it's free, but it's also the training where they train all the doctors, like residency. So you don't have to pay, but you're basically a guinea pig. And older sister Selena, who we know a decade older than her, and they share a birthday. Oh, I'm sorry, Florence. Selena is Johnny's mom. That's the very oldest sister. Her older sister, who always used to have to watch her and stuff, Flo, is now a nurse at this same hospital. So they somewhat get better treatment, but not for real. We know that Teeny's mom, she goes by the Badass Teeny B still, is constantly in and out the hospital. So they know them there. So something happens that's pretty traumatic. When she goes back there, they ask her, this is the first time her dad dropped her off, and this is the first time that they do not allow a parent to go back there with her, because she's 14 and she's starting to grow into her looks, and she's starting to, you know, look like what they perceive to be a little bit adult. So they stop her father from going back there with her, which is oopsie daisy number one, because even back then we had like a standard of treatment and how you treat people and children and all these things, right? Then instead of asking her what's wrong, they immediately assume that she's pregnant or that she has contracted an STD. She tells them she's never had sex, but she says that they all ignore her, and when they're doing, like, they tell her to take off her pants, she says she doesn't want to, she starts crying, and they threaten, you know, to basically, like, there's an emergency room full of people. So she takes her pants off, they give her an examination, and in the process of that, they break her hymen. So basically confirming, like, she was a virgin, but they didn't believe her, and so now they're met with a lot of, like, shame. The doctors kind of rush around and try and figure out what to do and figure out what's going on. Turns out she has, like, a hepatitis type virus, because her eyes started turning yellow. But in the process of all of that, her dad, she tells her sister Flo, who's a nurse there, and Flo is very upset by this, even though we know Flo to be her older sister, who's very annoyed. She's no longer a teenager now, she's about 24, and she's a nurse, and she's like, they did not handle that correctly, we could sue them. They do not, and Flo and the dad wanted to sue the hospital for that. The mom did not want to, because as we know, they already have an ongoing thing with the police in Galveston, and that's going to come up in the next chapter, and she doesn't want to make any waves. And so this is being talked about while Tina is in her room, or so they think she's not listening. And her mom makes a comment, well, do you think she's pregnant? And the dad's like, no, she's not pregnant. But for Miss Tina, she felt like that was like a final nail in the coffin in terms of her mother not supporting her. We get all these examples throughout the book, like when she was at Holy Rosary and she would run home after she was being mistreated by the nuns, and her mom would send her back to school. How when, what was the other one that her mom, how when she wanted to be a singer, her mom said, you know, that's not realistic. And then now we have this situation where she says she wasn't having sex. She told everyone, like, and even the doctor saying, like, they broke her hymen, and the mom is still kind of like, well, do you think she could be? And so from here, even though we can see all through this that Miss Tina wants to leave Galveston, I feel like this is like this is like confirming it, because she's like, my mama don't support me. And it just makes you understand why she supported Beyonce and Solange so much in certain things, because you can love your mom as much as, you know, as any of us love our mother, but if you don't feel supported by your mother, like, that's a whole separate compartmentalization of feelings. And so that's something that I hope to never make my child feel like I'm not supporting them, because that sticks with them. Because obviously Miss Tina's in her 70s and she still is able to describe accurately in each situation how she felt unsupported by her mom, and how that feeling drove her literal decision making. Where am I going? So she, after all of this happens, we hear about her friend Vernell, who was also at one point in their singing group. I don't know if I mentioned that in the last chapter, but Vernell couldn't really sing, so she wasn't a good fit. But she's Miss Tina's friend, and this is her best friend Vernell, and she is smart as a whip. She gets straight A's, and unwittingly Vernell gets pregnant. And because of that, and because of the time, you have to remember this is 1968, they're freshmen in high school, she has to drop out of regular school and go to night school, and so she can have her baby there. She saw how having a baby made Vernell tied to Galveston forever. And that was her one big goal. Like, she wanted to leave Galveston. And so she was like, I cannot get pregnant, right? I can't get pregnant because I will never be able to leave. And I think with Vernell getting pregnant and Skip getting his, if you remember from our last chapter reading, Skip got his girlfriend pregnant, and that halted and killed his football scholarship dreams. You can understand and see her mom's anxiety in terms of Tina getting pregnant. And so because of that, she doesn't really let her go anywhere or go out at all. And if we also remember, when Skip was beaten by the police, it was because he went out, like he went to a party and his mama didn't want him to go. So now with Tina, we see all, like, she is the last child, right? And her parents are also older, like they're in their 60s by the time she's a teenager. Relatable content, I can definitely relate to that, as were mine. Like, so it's kind of like they are like, no, we're not gonna let go of you, like, no, you can't do this. And so that leads us into our next chapter, chapter 10, which is called Before I Let Go. It takes place in January of 1971, and by this time Miss Tina is 17 years old. So this chapter goes from the end of her junior year to kind of like the end of her senior year. Like, this chapter goes like a whole year with the stories. So we know Miss Agnes does not let Miss Tina go outside a lot, but she does let her go to like this concert hall with Selena, her oldest sister, and Johnny. Uncle Johnny made my dress, and she's spandex, she looks a mess. And Selena is Johnny's mom, for context. So at this concert hall, a lot of acts come into town. One most notably the Shylights, which is an iconic black group. And we learn about how the lead singer Eugene tried to pop at Miss Tina, which is a very fun story, because at the time she was 17, but he didn't know that. And it was one of those things where they invited, like, he basically asked her on a date, and her and Johnny started laughing, and Johnny was like, you got work tomorrow, remember? Because she was trying to play grown. And so they tell Selena about it in the car, and they all laugh. But this is a place where Johnny and Teenie can cut up, they can dance. Selena's still young, she's in her late 30s, so she takes rum because it's a BYOB spot. She made sure to say that. It's a BYOB spot, and they just vibe, and she loves being around her older sister and her nephew Johnny, and they always enjoy each other's company. Now here's the thing, we know Uncle Johnny is openly gay, and the thing that I think is so like poignant, and I'm so happy like we're reading this book, but that she included this piece in the book, is that the family was always accepting of Johnny. She said she feels like the family was accepting because Selena accepted Johnny first, and Selena treated her son a certain way, and I cannot agree more. I think the way that you treat your child and the light that you instill to your child will be reflected on to the world. And so you set that standard. She was like, Selena didn't get on Johnny for how he acted. Selena didn't disrespect him. She only loved and respected him. And so by default, everyone else had to do that as well. So he's always openly been gay, and his family has always accepted him. It has not been an issue. But to the outside world, there are comments made. They do hear people, like, they do see people looking around town and making comments. We hear about the old ladies in front of the candy shop who make comments about him and Tina all the time. And around the time all this is going on, Johnny is 20, because remember, he's like 4 years older than Miss Tina. And since she has her heart set on leaving Galveston, she wants to make sure that Uncle Johnny gets a boyfriend, basically, because she was like, she could tell he was lonely, and lonely in the way that he didn't have people who were like him. Like, it is lonely to not feel like you can talk about or receive romantic love in front of like society. And so that's kind of what was happening because of the space and time they were living in. And so she knew a gay boy who was openly flamboyantly gay, a white boy, at school, and she said, where do y'all be going? And so we find out about the underground gay club that's like an open secret called the Kontiki in Galveston. And her and Johnny start going. They have an amazing time. It's the first time she was like, disco hadn't gone mainstream, but the Kontiki had disco lights, and they were all shaped like penises, kind of as like a signal, like this is that. Like, and she was just mesmerized by it because she had never seen anything like that. And so the first time they went together, and basically Johnny started going to the Kontiki by himself, and from there he started developing friendships and obviously getting in with his community, his tribe. He got to know the drag queens and was taking Miss Tina to drag shows. And she talks about how much she wanted to tell other people about this club because it was so much fun, but there was like this air of like, you can't do that, like this is a secret. And I wish it was, because you know, the police could come in, people could get arrested, all these different things. So she understood even at 17 the importance of like keeping this space safe. And she talks about seeing queer black joy and freedom for the first time and just being like, this is amazing. So from that, what also is going on with Uncle Johnny, we know he's been making clothes with Tina because his mom's a seamstress, his grandmother's a seamstress, he's now a seamstress, and he makes these clothes for everyone around town, all the guys he makes clothes for, because he has like such good designs and the quality, right? But when he gets involved with the drag queens, he starts making clothes for the girls. And here we have the origins of Renaissance. My God. I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. It's like literally you're learning so much lore. Now, I don't think I mentioned this because this was just a detail, but it comes back to, it's important in this chapter. Selena, I did say that Selena lived like less than a block away from Miss Tina's parents' house, so she could always run there, right? But she lived in a duplex, and she lived on the bottom floor of the duplex. So Johnny was getting so well known around town and making so many designs for people that by the time he was 20, he was able to afford his own apartment, even though he was originally living with his mother. And so the top part of the duplex became open, so he moved in at the top, and he was running his clothes making business out the top, and his mama was running her clothes making business out the bottom. Now here's the thing. Now we don't hear much about Johnny's dad, Selena's husband, throughout this book, but she does mention him this one time where after Johnny started making all the clothes for the drag queens, like they would go up and they would actually get dressed, they would get fitted, and because it was like a safe space, and Miss Tina would be up there and Johnny would style them, and Miss Tina would do their hair. Oh my God, there we go. We're seeing the origins. Johnny would style them, Miss Tina would do their hair, and they would go back down the stairs looking so beautiful. So Johnny's dad, kind of paying attention but not paying attention, one day offhandedly said like, what happened to them boys? Like, them boys went back up there, but girls came downstairs. And Miss Tina says it was so funny because he was genuinely confused. Like, he felt like he had missed the boys leaving. He was like, oh, when that happened? And so she talks about how they laughed about that for a really long time. Girl, them boys went up there and them girls came down. Where them boys go? I said, ain't that something? So again, another night, Shaft comes out. Shaft, you was a fine mother. Shut your mouth. Shaft comes out, and Miss Tina and her homegirls go to see Shaft opening weekend. It's a big deal because blaxploitation is all the rage, and if you know anything, a little bit of history, blaxploitation was one of the first times that black people were really making movies for us, by us, right? We talk about Tubi, we talk about Tyler Perry, but in a time where this really wasn't common. Before that, we had only had Carmen Jones with Dorothy Dandridge. Like that was a big deal, and that was in the 50s, right? Black movies were not, they were few and far between, and when they did happen by big studios, they were like a once-a-year thing. But if you think about blaxploitation films, those were black creatives making black films. Like the other films, just like with anything else, those were white people making films with black people, but this was black people making films for black people. And so that's why it felt different, that's why it was received differently, and that's why they are still so iconic, and we cite them to this day, right? So actually they're waiting for Skip, is ironically, to come get her from the movies, and the cops start bothering her. Now the thing, we find out the cops think that they are prostitutes, and she's like, the white cop says, what's your name? And she's like, I'm not gonna give you my name. She does say she was revved up off of watching Shaft, and she already had a big afro, she already thought she was a black kid, so I'm not gonna give you my name. Cop says, get in the car. He made a big show of it. The teenagers are booing him. They take her down to the station, and basically it just turns into like this one cop, he's not a sergeant, but his sergeant like siding with him because he's white. They couldn't keep them or hold them on nothing, but basically they're like, it just turns into the white cops in Galveston saying, you're a Beyonce, right? We beat your brother's ass. Then bringing that shit up. And I was thinking as I was reading this, I was like, I wonder at what point, like, do the cops in Galveston, because now Beyonce's name rings bells and it's her daughter's first name, but before it was that, it was their last name, and it kept them on the radar of these police officers for, you know, at least a decade at this point, because Skip is so much older. He's not in high school no more. He's a grown man with a child, and so it's like, I wonder what happens now when them people hear Beyonce. You know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta think about the full circle. So the last part of this chapter is when we're ending on her senior year. So she graduates. She says senior year was a blur. All she can remember she needs to get done, and she wanted to leave Galveston. And her parents thought she was going to leave immediately, but she ended up staying the summer because she was saving up for a plane ticket to fly to Los Angeles. Well, Linda is Selena's oldest daughter, and by this time she's in her 30s. She's about 30 years old. She's living in San Diego, and she got divorced, and Linda was always very smart. She says Linda was very pretty, but she was very smart, and people didn't focus on her being smart because she was so pretty, and Linda didn't like that. And so when her marriage imploded, she went to San Diego, and she was just more of like, you got to use your brain. Now she was that cousin, which don't we all aspire to be that big cousin, that pretty big cousin who said, yeah, but that beauty don't mean shit. You're gonna use your brain, young buck. Use your brain, little lady. Yep, that's exactly the big cousin auntie I need to be, child. Pretty, but pretty do as pretty does, right? And we know that from Pretty Hurts, but that statement comes from Miss Tina's mama, who said it a lot. So Ronnie, who was another one of Selena's kids, because Selena got 11 kids. She got 8 kids too. And he's the stair-step, the brother. I think he's a year older or a year younger than Johnny. He was living in San Diego, and so they come to visit, and everyone knows Miss Tina wants to go to San Diego, and so she's talking, or no, I'm sorry, wants to go to California, but she's like, oh, I'm saving up for my plane ticket, and they're like, just come with us, like, you could save all that money and just give us gas money, it'll be a lot cheaper. And so she ends up going to San Diego, and this chapter ends with her showing up on Linda's doorstep and her being like, make yourself at home. And so the end of this chapter is us kind of learning about Miss Tina, or the end of Act 1 is going to be us learning about Miss Tina in California, which is really, really exciting. So much lore. I love it. This is such a good book. God, now I have to, like, I really wasn't planning on going to, I know she's doing a book tour signing. I wasn't planning, but the next one I'm gonna see if whatever city is, and I'm gonna see if I can make it, because I would love to have her sign this. Like, I would love to have her sign this and come put it back in the camera and be like, Miss Tina signed my book. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all tomorrow so we can finish Act 1 of Daughter.